This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Radar, and I'm so thrilled to be speaking with Jess Wu Calder about season two of Blindspotting. How are you, Jess?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I loved season two of Blindspotting, so I'm very happy to have a
Oh my
chance to talk
goodness.
about it.
That is such a
And
relief.
I understand that you've been with Blindspotting as a project for a very long time.
Yes, I think Ralph and I did the math the other day, and I think it's 17 years, so it's been a minute. But it's been an incredible emotional and creative and worthy journey, and I actually wouldn't trade a single year away.
Has the story or the focus evolved over the course of time, just with current events and society as it is today, or was it always sort of planned like this for the film and the show?
I think from with the film, I would say that unfortunately, um, the the initial inspiration, which was the Oscar grant shooting, even 10 years after that, or 15 years or 17 years now, it is something that unfortunately our society is still struggling with and dealing with. So I think that there was a moment when we were developing that script that we thought that, oh, is this still going to be relevant? And that as each year passed, unfortunately, it just felt like it was more and more relevant and more important that we get it made. So in terms of the film, I would say that the focus hasn't really changed. If anything, it's just become more crystallized and more passionate from all of us to tell this story. In terms of the series, the focus did change because in making the film, it was so focused on the friendship between these two guys that we were unable to give the women of the story really the time on screen that their story deserved. So when we got the chance to do a series, I think that we all just sort of were like, it'd be so cool that we could just sort of shift it a bit, and still tackle these important issues, but with a different lens.
You make your directorial debut in season two with episodes three and four. Is that something you always knew that you wanted to do?
I would say that it was something that crossed my mind in film school, but I actually went to film initially to be a writer, and it wasn't sort of until halfway through film school that I sort of realized that the life of a writer, at least at that time, seemed very lonely, and it wasn't something that I dealt with well. And so I sort of transitioned to being a producer, because with being a producer, you get to be part of a project from the very beginning until the very, very end, and you're around people all the time. So I kind of thought that might be a better fit. And then, recently, when I look back at the time, when I think about why I didn't end up wanting to be a director, I think that it honestly boils down to me not thinking that I would ever be good enough. And so thinking that, like, if I'm not going to be good enough, I'm going to be the person who can help the director with his or her vision and create the perfect team around them, so that we can bring out the best in everyone to tell the best story that we can. And it wasn't until we had our Sundance premiere of the movie Blindspotting, and that night at one of the after events, we're all celebrating, we're really excited. The editor of that film, who I gotten quite close with over post, because we that was just a very intense process, process. He pulled me aside and he was sort of like, Jess, like, I don't know if you've ever really thought about this, but I feel like you're a director and it would be a shame if you never took that step. And when he said that, it sort of like um, shook me at my core, because I was like, oh my God, like no one's ever really put that lens on me before. And I think I sort of kept it to myself, and sort of like, but like sort of a seed had started to like be planted and started to grow. And then I mentioned it to my husband, and he was like, yeah, I actually think that you would be great at doing that. But I was still pretty like shy about that idea, because again, I think that I maybe lacked faith in myself. But then we were on the mixing stage of season one of Blindspotting, and something that most of my close friends know about me is that I am very klutzy and I spill things all the time. And so, classic me, I spilled my soda and it goes everywhere. And I'm like frantically trying to clean it up. And then I'm like, oh, I'm just going to get up and get some napkins. And while I was away from the table, my husband Keith mentioned to Rafa that this is that being a director was something that I was trying to figure out. And by the time I got back to the lunch table, Rafa just turned to me and said, "You're directing in season two," and I was like, are you sure? Like, I feel really like nervous about this. I like it's a big responsibility, and we should probably talk to Diggs. And he's like, got it. And he immediately just texted Diggs, and then made sure to show me his response, which was just one line text that said, either she directs or I quit. And in that moment, I had like all the, their belief in me, like really just started to make me cry. And I was like, oh my God, like this is happening. And it was, you know, their faith in me like means a lot. And again, I think it has a lot to do with that 17-year journey that we've been on together.
Well, episode three, I think, is absolutely terrific. And there's specifically, when you're talking about a journey, there's that really powerful montage, when the parents try to talk to Sean and explain, the
Yeah.
history of, Black Americans. Can you talk
Mhm.
about just crafting the magnitude of that scene and putting it together?
I can. It was definitely an intimidating task to tackle. I kind of joke because I think that the guys, when they were like, "And you are gonna direct, and we're gonna make sure that your episodes are super hard, so that you can prove that you can do it, and you can prove to yourself that you're good enough." I didn't fully understand the magnitude of what they meant until like I like looked on on the page and saw this one line, and all it said was like, you know, they tell the history of the N word through dance, and that was all it said. And anytime I said, "Hey, is there any more clarity you guys want to give me on this? Anything that you guys are thinking?" And they're like, "No, no, no. You're the director. You figure it out." And I was like, "Okay." And from that moment, I think I just my like first like beginning inspiration like for it was to make sure that we always remember that it was a bedtime story for Sean, and so it had to feel like a bedtime story, and it had to feel like, um, in some ways, that they were trying to preserve his innocence the best that they could, while still talking about such a traumatic topic. And so that was why, like for me, it was really important to like have sort of magical elements like of the bed like being pulling away, of the walls coming up, and sort of having him be transported like through this um illustrated book, for that was kind of the analogy that I was going for, and that's why the backdrops are all illustrated, and everything was intended to like feel like a children's book come alive. um Obviously, like I'm so blessed and so lucky because I got to work with Bugs, who is one of the best choreographers I think ever. And when he and I started to dive into it, we were very sure that we wanted to tackle it through points of time. And because of that, we also wanted to make sure that we represented each time as faithfully as we could, to also give, you know, um, give all the people that actually went through it their proper due. And so the like sit-in scene was very much based right off of the first sit-in that happened at the Woolsworth diner. And like so the like menus that they're using are actually the like menus from that time. The auction block was built with the, I mean, it's horrifying to even see, but like with the actual measurements of like what an auction block was for that time, and everything was just, it was very important to try to maintain the historic integrity while also keeping the emotional weight. For me, it was also important to try to have sort of at the core the women's perspective too. And so for me, like it was seeing making sure that we told the like stories of the Breonna Taylor and Mamie Till and all the women that kind of can sort of have been forgotten in some ways, even though this movement is so present. I still think that we don't say their names enough. And so I thought that like it would be great to have them be front and center. And so that's why we have the incredible Sasha, and she's the woman who's on the auction block, and we focus on like her, and we see that like the pain that she's going through. And then in the diner scene, we see it again when like the salt is being poured on her. We can just, through her movements, we can feel the like weight that she's been carrying through the decades. And then comfort at the very end, like you see her expression, and we feel her expression when she sees Bugs getting shot. And then at the end of the day, again, it's all about us trying to figure out like how do we get inside a 7-year-old's brain. And as he's being bombarded with sort of a sensory overload, and that's why it was so important to like work with my incredible DP, Taran Anderson, and the gaffer Michael, who I mean, I feel kind of bad because I think everybody probably had like a seizure by like the end of the day, because we kept doing all this flickering of the lights, and the flickering of the blues and the reds, because it was so important to try to understand that his brain is processing, and his synapses are like stuttering as like he's trying to honestly just process like some like a, a history that you can't really process. And so having said all that, I will also say that like none of this would have been possible like without the incredible score that our composers did. And I think that the way that they were able to convey pain and also the sort of like rhythmic feeling of a processing of emotions with every single note is incredible. And our sound team, I like every single time I see that shot of the salt being poured, like I can hear the like pouring of the salt, and feel like it's pouring over every single year since 1960, over generations, of people that are dealing with what this word means. And that was a really long-winded explanation of the sequence. I feel like I could probably talk about it forever. But hopefully when people watch it, the main thing that they take away is just the emotion of the scene, which I think Atticus, who even though he is an incredible actor, like this task that we gave him, I hope everyone understands that because he's a child, we weren't even able to shoot him at the same time as the dance. So he never even saw that is just him, and like interpreting like what he thinks he's seeing, with me being like, and then salt is being poured, and what does that feel like? And the fact that a 7-year-old actor can like convey all that depth through his eyes and through his face, while he's being pulled on like a bed on a bed rig is incredible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's really incredible, and I know that one thing that interests me is finding out about organizations where I can learn more, and just this show deals with so many things that go well beyond entertainment, obviously. So I was wondering if you can talk about any groups that people would find worth checking out to learn more.
Definitely, three groups that are very near and dear to the Blindspotting family, and I feel like should be just shouted out just in general for the work that they do. One is the SE Justice Group, and they work to harness the collective power of women with incarcerated loved ones to try to end mass incarceration. And I just think it's such, I mean, obviously, if you watch the show, that is the heart of what the show is about. Like, to understand that what Ashley is going through is not a singular experience. It is something that is experienced by women. Like, I think the stats are something like 1 out of 4 women have a loved one in incarceration, and to have that staggering fact and just know that like she is not alone, and hopefully our show can help provide a platform and a window into what that experience is like. But even more importantly, this group is actually doing the work And so I just feel like people should go and check out this group and see what they're doing and hopefully support them. And then on top of that, the Last Prisoner project is a group that is focused on trying to make sure that we can hopefully get the release of every prisoner who is in prison because of cannabis, because that's crazy. Because as we all know, so many people are getting rich off of it, and it's just not fair. And I think that the never ending work that they're doing to try to get it done, like they can't have enough hands on deck to try to get more progress across. And then the Reform Alliance is working to make sure that we can help transform our current probation and parole system. I know that this is something that we deal with in the film and also in the series, but the idea that you can get sent back to jail for the most minor infraction is crazy. Like, because I didn't clean my room, I'm going back to jail because I missed coming home on time because of something beyond my control. Like, this shouldn't be allowed, and people should look into this and support this, and let's change. Let's do change together.
Well, thank you, Jess, so much for taking a few minutes to speak with me and for
Of
providing
course.
those resources. Looking forward to hopefully a season 3 soon of Blindspotting.
Okay, thank you so much.